How's it going, everybody? I'm actually really excited about this series. VMware NSX, whether it's NSX for vSphere or NSXT, I've been diving into it pretty heavily on both. And let me just say that both are awesome technology features to work with. And before I get into any further along, I want to knock this out in the first 30 seconds. If you want to play with either technology and you're like, well, I can't have access to it, this, that, or the other, go out and get yourself a VMUG Advantage membership. I'll put the link in the description below. And the other thing you're going to need to do is go out and get a couple of servers, at least one server. I personally use Cisco UCS C220s. I'll put the specs of what I use in the description, but normally it's going to be an E5 2650 or better, so version 1. Anything newer will work as well. And that allows me to play around with pretty much all the features and capabilities. Now, normally I would run this in a nested environment inside a VMware Workstation. But I've tried to do this in VMware Workstation, and I did not have good results. So I decided to take a different approach and use a nested environment running on top of ESXi. And I'll be honest with you, it's way, way faster. So I'm moving away from the VMware Workstation method of doing stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to re-record some videos for the data center virtualization series because I'm having much better success and whatnot in running on top of ESXi. What I mean by that is I take whatever server you buy, whether it's Dell, HP, Cisco, whatever you decide to leverage is your choice. Shooter's choice in that particular case. What I recommend you do is get the VMUG Advantage license, which is going to give you access to all the bits. You just download them, and then it gives you licensing for everything as well. And that's really the big thing that you need to, if you really want to dive into VMware, you can get a free license through VMware if you get the free trial for vSphere 7. You can download that, and you get basically a free license, but it limits your capabilities and your feature sets dramatically. Where if you go get the license, you get Enterprise Plus licensing that's good for a year. So they give you basically all the whiz-bang wow features, but you're paying $200 for the access. It's really no different than Cisco Modeling Labs licensing for CML, where you pay the $200 and you get access to all the operating systems. And that's how I do a lot of my other Cisco training, and my preparation and stuff like that. So those are the first things I want to get out of the way of how do you access or work with the stuff that I'm working with, because everything that I'm going to be showing you came directly from VMUG. So I'm a huge VMware proponent. I think everybody should learn VMware. It's actually the direction I'm going right now is VMware. Then I'm eventually going to shift over to AWS, Azure, Google, and that type of stuff. Start doing more network virtualization, and I should say virtualization and cloud is more the direction I'm going in now. So really cool stuff. With that being said, the servers that I'm using are the ones that you guys have seen in the videos before. They're the Cisco UCS C220s, E5 2650, E5 2660. Are the CPU models that I'm working with. Again, I'll put that information in the description below. And really the thing that I wanted everybody to understand is when we're building this stuff out, we're going to be installing virtual machines that are going to be running ESXi 6.7 Update 3, and we're going to be running them inside of ESXi. Now, if that just blew your mind, I understand. I'm going to go through, and I have a couple of little PowerPoints that I'm going to run you through real quick just for visual purposes to help you guys understand what's going to be going on here. But what we're going to be doing, and let me go ahead and bring this guy over here. This server right here, I just got it running and ready to go. So let me go ahead and log into it real quick, and then I will show you what we're going to go do. All right, so right now, close these two out real quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch screens over to my desktop. So here we have my server, right? I have an E5. This is a Cisco UCS C220 M3, and I am running dual 8-core E5 2660 CPUs at 2.2 gigahertz, which gives me about 35 gigahertz of total capacity. So that's basically where that comes into play. I have 128 gigs of RAM in the server, and that's what I'm working with. And then because of the fact that I already have a QNAP storage appliance already set up with a 4 terabyte iSCSI target configured on it, I basically just connect all of my ESXi hosts to it, and it's shared storage amongst all of my hosts. Right now I'm running 2 of them. I have this server right here and another one that's running VMware NSXT. So once I get done doing NSXT, I'm going to do a series on NSXT as well. But I've done a series on, I've always wanted to do an NSXv series, and because there's a couple commenters on what I, on the channel for NSX for vSphere, figure, you know what, why not? So that's that. So what we'll do is in this virtual machines area, you notice I have a router running, CSR2, which is this guy right here. I have this CSR 1000V running currently in my environment. This is going to be our physical router that we're going to connect to from our virtual environment. I'm going to walk you through how to do all of it. So there's nothing that you guys won't be aware of when we get down to it. Now, to help you understand what we're going to go do, let me go ahead and do a little slideshow here. Whoops, 1 second here. Alright, so here's the topology we're basically going to be working with. Let me kind of just paint the picture here for you as we're going through this. So what I'm going to do, and I don't have everything labeled here for the simplicity of this is just a topology diagram. I will go through and paint the picture as we're going along. But essentially what we're going to go do at a high level is we're going to install these guys right here. These are going to be the ESXi hosts that I mentioned just a minute ago. These are going to be virtual ESXi hosts, or virtual machines. I'm going to install ESXi on. So they're going to be ESXi hosts running inside of ESXi, or what they refer to as a nested ESXi. Now this is not supported in a production environment, so for a lab it works just fine. So this right here, this first big square, this will be our compute cluster. And we're going to go through and I'm going to walk you through how to deploy the hosts and how to get the networking all squared away and all that good stuff, and deploy the storage area network and all that good stuff that goes along with it. We're going to get a couple of hosts deployed and get that all good to go. Now this one down here, this rectangle here, will be our management cluster. And you can see that it's going to be set up like that because I have a bunch of management devices, right? I'm going to have one dedicated host right here that will be running vCenter server. So I'll show you guys how to make that happen. I'm going to have another dedicated host that's going to be for running the NSX manager inside of ESXi. And then I'm going to, or I should say inside of vCenter server. And then I'm going to have this other dedicated host that's going to be running 4 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM, where we're going to deploy our cluster controller. We're only going to deploy a single controller node. We're not going to deploy 3 because in a real lab, you're not going to really need to worry about that. We have our distributed logical router control VM, which we'll go ahead and deploy to do our east-west communication, which is going to be routing between our VMs that are attached to logical switches, which is what these things are right here. And then we're going to deploy our Edge Services Gateway. This is going to be our connection between the virtual and the physical world. We're going to deploy that and get it all squared away. Now over here I have these guys right here. These two switches right here are basically going to be our virtual distributed switch. I'm just drew 2 because it made the lines easier to understand, but it's going to be one switch, and we're just going to use one VDS to connect all of our ESXi hosts to. There's going to be multiple distributed port groups on the host so that we can have all of our ESXi hosts on the DPG and get that squared away. And then on the DPG, we're going to have a port group on this guy right here, this interface right there, that's going to connect up to this CSR 1000V. So this is my CSR that I've got deployed. And the CSR is going to be terminating all of our routing. So we're going to be able to use this router to do OSPF. We're going to use this router to be able to do BGP and all that good stuff that goes along with it. And that's going to be where we go. And this will be the first thing that we deploy. This is essentially going to be Data Center 1 is what we're going to roll out. We're going to test a lot of the features out when it comes down to how this all comes into play. We're going to test east-west routing. We're going to test out north-south routing. We're going to test out distributed firewall. It's not here on the topology, but we are going to deploy the distributed firewall. We're going to do a lot of really cool stuff with how all this stuff comes into play. Now, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to take a look at this in a scaled operation. So what I mean by that is this. If I was to come over here to my, whoops, wrong, there we go, right here. This is going to be our dual data center deployment, meaning we are going to have two different data centers. Actually, I goofed up on my, these are supposed to be connected to these links. I didn't clean that up. But essentially what we're going to have here, let me go ahead and bring this over here to the middle so it's easier for me to draw. What we're going to go do, lost my pen, is we're going to have host 1 and host 2. So this is technically supposed to be host 2. I'll clean the topology up in a later video. We're going to have these two hosts deployed. So it's going to be this is going to be the compute cluster in DC1. And this will be the compute cluster in DC2. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a DLR that's going to do our east to west communication. We're going to have the DLR to ESG connection. This guy right here, this will be a transit logical switch. This will do our north to south routing. And then we're going to have a distributed port group uplink right here that will connect us up here via OSPF or BGP to the upstream network to get that all squared away. And then what we're going to do is we're going to test out both IPsec VPN. We're going to test out layer 2 VPN on the ESGs. We're going to test out more advanced firewalling capabilities, so on and so forth. And then eventually what we're going to go do is we're going to transition this topology over to a universal logical switch and a universal DLR. So we can see exactly how that goes across and do span connections and things like that. Some really cool stuff. But this gives you an idea of what we're going to be doing and how it's going to come into play. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to go do. We will build this out so we can see exactly how this stuff comes into play. Let me go switch back over to me. I will be walking you guys through each and every step of this. So we're not going to have one big topology and then just run through it in 20 videos. I will show you how to build a lab from the ground up because, to be honest with you, anytime I see somebody doing a lab, they already have everything working, right? And the thing that I feel like people are missing is, okay, how did you get your lab operational to be able to do the things that you're doing in either the blog or the video? And that's something that I spent a lot of time doing some research on. And it was basically reading a bunch of different blogs and watching a bunch of different videos and trying to piece together kind of what people are doing. So I had this working and it was working well. My goal as we move forward is to basically take this and we're going to roll it out in this video series. I have no idea how long it's going to be. So I'm going to test out a lot of features and a lot of capabilities. We're looking at a deep dive on NSX for vSphere. Once this is done, I will also do the same thing for NSXT. I have NSXT working, and I can prove it to you. It's actually pretty cool. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things I'm going to go do right now, just because I am in the mood to share. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way. Let me go ahead and jump back over here to my topology and minimize some things real quick. So here's NSXT. If I log into my vSphere environment, this is a different IP address. This is 10.255.1.50. This is on another ESXi host. Go ahead and log into him and log into this guy. NSXT is really cool. It did take me quite a long time to get it working, but once I got it working, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So let me go ahead and close this guy out. Again, let me go back to my, whoops. Let me go back to here. You need to make sure that you have vMug unless you're using the hands-on labs. You do have the ability of using hands-on labs for VMware, but honestly, I find it more beneficial if you have the ability to buy a server and run it locally in your home lab. Deploy ESXi on it and then go through and play with it that way. To be honest with you, you get more bang for your buck. Now going back over here, if we look at how this is set up, I have my DC1 compute cluster and I have my DC1 edge cluster. And if I look at these guys and I look at, for example, LVM1, which is just a Ubuntu virtual machine, you can see that I've got the network as the NSX segment 1. If I come over here to NSX and I go to networking and I come over here to click on policy as my view, not manager, and I click on the topology, this is the topology that I've built, right? I have my DC1 tier 0 gateway. It's set up, and I have my uplinks to my upstream router, which happens to be this guy right here. If I bring him over, this is my NSXT router. It's a CSR 1000V, and I do a show IP interface brief. Those IP addresses line up, and if I do a show IP BGP summary, I have learned a couple of prefixes from both peers, and I'm receiving BGP routes from these two segments down here. So everything's working. If I was to come over here to system and go expand out fabric and nodes, you're going to see, it takes a couple seconds for this to load, so just be patient with me for a second. If I click on managed by DC1, because you can have one NSXT manager managing multiple vCenter server instances. If I was to expand out DC1, oops, you can see that I have both ESXi hosts have been deployed with NSXT. They're both running 6.7. I have one host switch, which is an NVDS, because I'm running 6.7. You can't run a converged VDS. I've got 12 tunnels, which are the Geneve encapsulated setups. If I come over here to edge transport nodes, I have 2 of them. I have 12 tunnels up between them because I have multiple TEP IP addresses on each device, and 2 logical routers on my tier 0, or in this case, on my edge VM1, because I'm running in an active standby type of setup. And if I come over here to back to networking and I go to segments, I have a couple of segments set up and working the way that they need to. So I have these segments set up, and what's cool about it, if I come back over here to this guy and I click on this console for this particular virtual machine, which is Windows, I'm actually in the process of spinning up a couple of Windows servers to do some testing. I want to do the load balancing dive. So if I come in here and log into this guy, I will be deploying IIS on him. What's cool about it is he has internet access, right? I have internet access. If I come over here and I open up the command prompt and I give this an IP config, he gets an IP address through DHCP, and he has a 172.31.1 subnet, which, if you remember coming back over here to the network topology, he is connected to this segment right here, 172.31.1, right, segment 1. So by having that in play, I have that squared away for me. And if I come over here and I ping Google, give it a second to finish up, it's still trying to come online. If I ping Google, I have internet reachability. And if I wait 1 second, I do a tracert -d, or tracert google.com, you'll see that it's actually going to look up the hops. Let me cancel that. Let me just do a tracer to Google. And if you throw the -d in the beginning here, it won't do a DNS lookup. So here's my default gateway. There's the transit link between my tier 1 gateway and my tier 0 gateway. And then I have to go up to my next hop, which is going to be the router, which will be a 10.1.1.10. And some of that stuff isn't being translated. And there's one of my subnets, and then it goes out to the internet. So it's working the way that it's supposed to. Everything's looking pretty good. So I do have reachability to the internet, which is awesome. So this is going to allow me to test a lot of the cool features that come into play with NSX. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the stuff that I'm working on, and you guys will be going on a journey with me here in the very near future. I have more NSXT to learn, but the cool thing about it is, in case anybody was wondering, if you're doing NSX for vSphere, isn't that old. They're not. NSX vSphere is going to be deprecated, and that's true. But there's still people out there running it, and not everybody's going to be jumping on the NSXT bandwagon in the next 6 months and trying to do upgrades, right, or migrations to NSXT. There is a way to do that, and you can actually point your point NSXT to your old vCenter server, and then you can migrate. And I'll shoot a video on how to do that. But this is the cool stuff that you get to play with. So if you understand NSXv for vSphere, and you go to learn NSXT, once you get the understand the architecture differences between the two and understand how all that stuff works, a lot of the same terms are there. You know, you have a segment, which is a logical switch. You have a tier 1 gateway, which is a distributed router. You have a tier 0 gateway, which is more of your edge services gateway, and you have your distributed firewall. So there's a lot of similarities between V and T that carry over. So it was very easy to pick up on a lot of stuff. So I've learned made a lot of mistakes as I was going through and trying to get this working. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw me posting on Twitter on some of the stuff that I was dealing with. And I'm going to be going through and playing around with this stuff as we progress forward. So if this stuff seems interesting to you, let me know in the comment section below. I will definitely start putting out content on NSX. I'll definitely define it V or T, depending on what it is we're going to be covering. But until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next video.